All right, folks, we are officially live again. Welcome, welcome. I'm just going to send out my invites, make sure people know we are live. I talk kind of slowly while doing this so I can give myself time to share. But how are you all? Good evening. Good evening to you. Let's make sure I'm coming through clear. There we go. I could do like a sarcastic tone while doing that. Yeah, we're about to go live. At everyone. There is evidence for God. We are live. It would be so funny if like that made half the Discord rage quit. Yeah. Bring him in. Mm-hmm. Boom. Boom, boom, boom. Bam, 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 bam. That's the sound of me inviting Discord members to the room. For those who are keeping score. Remember me. What's up, Robin?
Not much. What are you doing?
We just started a live stream. The topic today is there is evidence for God.
Okay. So you bringing it?
Sure. Yeah. I can point to anyone's personal experience testimony and there's evidence for God.
True. I agree with that.
Yeah, I want to clear this issue up because
Yeah, we had a little bit.
it strikes me as atheists predominantly, at least in the stuff I see, that are making this mistake.
Yes.
And so I'm going to start with a little bit of reading, and then we will rock right into having some fun conversations about this. So there is evidence for God, but there is no proof for God. Whether it is true depends on whether this statement is true depends on how the terms evidence and proof are being used, of course. Evidence in philosophy, evidence is generally understood as information that increases or decreases the rational credibility of a proposition. Examples often offered as evidence for God include religious experiences and testimonies, the apparent fine-tuning or physical constants, the existence of a universe rather than nothing, the existence of consciousness, historical claims about miracles, moral experience, and objective moral values. Theists argue these observations. Theists argue these observations are more likely if God exists than if God does not exist. Now, what is proof? In the strict academic sense, proof usually means a demonstration that establishes a conclusion with necessity or near certainty, or we can say that brings us to a level of almost certain, right? This standard exists most clearly in mathematics, formal proofs, logic, valid deductions from accepted premises. Outside mathematics and logic, very little is, quote, proved in this sense. Science generally works with evidence, models, probabilities, and degrees of confidence rather than absolute proof. And one thing I want to add here is that obviously the predictability of scientific modeling is one of the most important things when the models are able to make reliable predictions. Why many people say there is no proof for God. When philosophers or scientists say this, they typically mean there is no argument or observation that compels rational assent to God's existence in the way that a mathematical proof compels assent to a theorem. Or you could say in the way that a robust scientific theory compels rational assent, like the theory of relativity, for example. In other words, reasonable, informed people can examine the same evidence and still disagree with regards to God. There'll be all of this evidence provided, and it seems to be the case that reasonable, informed people can examine the same evidence that God believers are using to demonstrate the existence of God and still just disagree. They can still say it's not compelling. Or, in more harsh terms, the evidence you've provided is shit. A common academic framing, so a philosopher might say, theism is evidentially supported if the evidence makes God's existence more probable. A lot of people are going to agree with that. Theism, and then there's the second line here, theism is proven only if the evidence makes God's existence logically unavoidable. So many philosophers, both theists and atheists, accept the first claim while rejecting the second. For example, the Christian philosopher Alvin Plantinga argues there is substantial Plantinga? Is that the Alvin Plantinga argues there is substantial evidence and warrant for belief in God, while acknowledging there is no universally compelling proof. Likewise, atheist philosophers often argue that evidence is sufficient, not that there is literally zero evidence. So from an academic perspective, saying there is evidence for God but not proof for God is a defensible and fairly mainstream position. The real disagreement is usually over how strong the evidence is, not whether evidence exists at all. So what I hear a lot in these conversations when people try to, and I hear it a lot from atheists. Atheists will say, yeah, there's no evidence for God. And that's just academically, from an academic perspective, that's not a true statement. Shitty evidence, like evidences you consider to be terrible pieces of evidence, they're still evidence. So it's, testimonials are evidence. But if someone came to you and all they had was their testimonial that they, last night while they were in their bed, they were taken out in an alien spacecraft, abducted, and there were experiments performed on them, and then they were put back in their bed, and then they woke up in the morning. And all you had to go on was their testimony about this experience. The question would be, even if that person was someone you fully trusted, would you feel justified in believing that they actually experienced that? What would be the more what would be a more reasonable answer? Perhaps that this was a mind dependent experience, in that there was no externality of this experience. It just happened within their mind while they were sleeping. So maybe a very realistic, lifelike dream state they were in. So yeah, I think there's a lot of anti-academic language being thrown around by some atheists when they say, there is no evidence for God. I think the right claim to make is that there is evidence for God, but none of the evidence is compelling enough to warrant belief. And
can I get a distinction?
There's almost certainly not proof for God. Yeah.
Because some people use this, anything that increases the probability of an outcome, and they'll say anything that increases that probability of being the case, that's evidence. But it seems like we don't know probabilities in some sense when we're talking about on this grandest scale. And many times what people are saying is if it increases the convincibility, not probability. Does that make sense? So a thing that increases the convincibility of an argument rather than the probability of which we may not be able to calculate.
Yeah, well, we can calculate. Yeah, we'll get you in a second. But like we were demonstrating on last night's show, we can calculate the probability of, the actual, let's say, person who was called Jesus of Nazareth in the Bible. We can calculate the probability of that person manifesting out of a piece of toast. Like we can do that quantum mechanical probability equation. We can show what the probability of that happening. And then we can also do the same of someone saying, when someone makes a testimony, there is a probability attached to that testimony. Just because we don't have it, there is a probability offered by that testimony. Now, like I gave in the alien example, we could get the quantum mechanical goods, the general, 1 in 1 quadrillion or whatever it's going to be for, Jesus manifesting out of a piece of toast, or, that this person actually was abducted by aliens. And like we can look at the probability of any proposition, but the fact that we don't have access to, the probability, like doing the calculation of the probability in real time, doesn't mean that a probability doesn't exist.
Yeah, but then
can I say something before?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I say something before? Yeah. So I just should say that, like, I think some of the reason why people might say there's no evidence for God is because it might turn out that theism is not even coherent, right? There are some arguments that affect that theism is not even a coherent position.
That won't matter. That won't matter, even if it's the most dog shit. Because even if it's the most dog shit, illogical proposition in the world, people could still find a way to believe it, and they could still present what they believe is evidence for the proposition, and we would be able to find a probabilistic computation with regards to that claim of how likely it is that that proposition is true.
Okay, well, so if I make a claim,
and again, like the thing is like we can sit here and try to dictate to academia that they should change what evidence means in academia, but I think it's more wise that people update and learn academic language and academic usage of terms, so that they're not going around saying like unscholarly, unacademic things. I think that's really important.
But Travis, there is a problem doing the calculation with these probabilities. Even in a claim, if I make the claim that like a purple UFO come down and picked me up and took me away, where do we even start on the proposition if we don't know that such purple UFOs, for example, exist?
It's at least because we already know that it's possible based on quantum mechanics that they do exist.
Okay, so
that's all we need. That's all we need for the
how we could.
Yeah. So if you say, what is the probability that?
And while you're looking that up, I just wanted to mention, everything that is a post facto claim, like for it to have, now that once we know that it happened, if we started 20 years or something before it happened, the probability of it happening is 0 by calculation. Like the toothpick that I'm holding in my hand, if you'd have asked me 20 years ago, what's the probability that this particular toothpick is in my hand right now?
It's not 0.
And I know it's not 0, but it's so close to 0 but yet here it is. So when
Yeah,
you do
so
like
Wait,
this
can I-
post
but that's not
facto-
that's not refuting what I was saying earlier about probabilities. It's not that the probability is above that it's reasonable to believe that these things are going to happen. That's not the standard at all. It's just does it actually raise the probability of the proposition? That's the question. So
Travis,
let's
can I say something?
go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm saying that I would suggest to you that like yes, in academia they do believe that a lot of philosophers of religion will say that like there is a probability of like theism being the case. But to be clear, that's under the assumption that theism is a coherent position. I'm saying if we don't grant that
it's not.
theism is a coherent position,
No,
then
it's not.
it cannot.
That's wrong.
Okay,
It's
I
not
just want
under
to
that
say-
assumption. It's not under that assumption at all. If you can
if it's
show
incoherent,
me,
can it be?
if you can, yeah, the coherence or incoherence has to be. I think it would be epistemically responsible to not believe in incoherent things, but we see people believing in incoherent things all the time.
Yeah, but I'm just
Incoherence
pointing
is
out that it wouldn't have a probability under that assumption, right?
Sure,
Like,
sure it
could-
would.
The probability
Give him a
would
physical
increase.
example.
Incoherent things can have a probability. But let me get the UFO thing out
Okay.
here first so we can take a look at it. Put me back in bed.
What I should say is that no evidence can increase a proposition that is established to be incoherent. That's what I should say.
Right. If
That's what I'm saying.
everyone here said that they have seen a spherical cube, would that have increased the probability of there being a spherical cube?
Well, the proposition itself would still be considered evidence in academia, but the judge of the evidence could say this is completely incoherent and self-contradictory. Your evidence is nonsensical.
But how much did it raise the probability?
Well, to the person holding it, it may have raised the probability significantly. So this is about the not just how you would evaluate, but like what the person, because we're conflating things here, because there's what the person is going to believe about what the probability, what they believe about how much this proposition or this experience raised the probability or whatever.
But that's why
and
I
then
asked
it's
the
gonna
first
and then it's
question
gonna come
first.
through, and then it's gonna, don't interrupt me, Robert. Okay? You got it? Okay. So it does matter what the claim maker believes about the proposition. Now, we can examine it, like if we're the judges, we can examine the proposition from like a quantum mechanical probability perspective and see like, okay, what is the actual probability of something like this occurring? So I'm going to tell you about the alien. So it looks like it's about 1 in 10 to the power of 100. So that means 0. It's saying 10 to the 50th power, 1 in 10 to the 50th power, to 1 in 10 to the 100th power, somewhere in between that. So we know that, see this number here? This is like the generous number of likelihood of an alien, actually abducting me from my room, bringing me out and doing experiments on me,
Okay.
So it's, and this is the rough Bayesian estimate based on quantum mechanics.
So let me ask you this. Would that have been a different equation if I would not have made the claim? Did the fact of me making the claim change the equation?
Well, the claim needs to be made, right? So you made the claim, and that become, the fact is that you made the claim. But if we're saying like we have to make sure, we have to be careful to clarify whether we're talking from the position of the claim maker or the people judging the claim. You know, the people saying like, well, do I have reasonable justification to believe that Travis was abducted by you know, an alien, been experimented on, and dropped him back in his bed. If we run the Bayesian quantum mechanical estimate, we find that there's really no good reason to believe, based on this, the tiniest almost imaginable probability that this happened. So to the person judging it, does it in any meaningful way raise the probability? I wouldn't say it does in a meaningful way. But the testimony itself as a piece of evidence is not a zero probability from an evidence perspective. If the question is, you know, what's the probability that this actually happened? Let's study this piece of evidence. And one of the things we can do is run this Bayesian estimate. And this tells us that it's just almost certainly the case that this did not happen. That would be a reasonable conclusion born out of examining that evidence, I think.
Hey, Travis.
Yeah.
What's up, man? Good to see y'all.
Oh, it's Zemo. Hey, how's it going?
What's up, man? A long time ago, I remember you said how you were talking about important things for people to learn about philosophy and being smart and stuff like that. And you said something that stuck with me. You said people need to know the difference between evidence and proof.
Yeah.
Can you can you expand on that just a little bit? Because I think I know what you meant, but I just wanted to hear it from you. Difference between evidence and proof.
I started this episode with a bit of reading, and that included it. So evidence.
Okay.
So like in academic philosophy, evidence is generally understood as information that increases or decreases the rational credibility of a proposition. So examples often used as evidence for God would be religious experiences and testimonies. So if someone has a religious experience that we can't have access to, and they make a testimony, that doesn't mean that people are going to find that raises, just because they made the testimony, just because they claim to have had the experience, doesn't mean that within the person who's hearing the claim, that they're going to think that, okay, in a meaningful way, this raises the probability that this happened. But when we're studying the evidence and we want to use things like, you know, Bayesian estimates based on quantum mechanics, like we just ran for the alien abduction thing, we come to understand that this claim doesn't have a zero probability. It's not just simply possible that this happened. There is the tiniest, you know, one let's see, what was the 1 in 10 to the power of 100, you know, or 50 zeros in a very generous estimate. So somewhere between that range.
Sounds
so
like
almost certainly, you know, almost certainly not the case, right? And when people like believe, and the reason why it's important to point this out, because people will think like an alien abduction story is like way more probable than that.
Yeah.
There's a reason why so many people believe these things, right? So, and then we'll go on to proof, right? So that's an example for, you know, testimonial evidence is still considered evidence in academia. So proof in the strict, and again, this is
most
different.
Data points are considered evidence. Most data points are evidence. I mean, fewer things fall into the realm of proof than evidence. I mean, almost everything is.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, like literally, you can provide the shittiest evidence for anything, right? Someone again in the same example, and I'm just giving the academic perspective. Someone could get abducted by the alien, and then they say, and let's say they're on trial, quote unquote, in academia, and they say, well, do you have any evidence that this actually happened, or do we just have to go on your testimony? And like, the alien gave me this orange, and they give them a navel orange, and then they look at this additional piece of evidence that's offered, and then almost certainly all of them are going to be like, okay, well, let's take a look at this orange. Like there's no discernible difference between this orange than one that was grabbed off the shelf at the grocery store.
There's no.
So they're going to be like, in crude terms, this is dipshit evidence. This is terrible evidence. Like this is evidence that wastes. This is evidence that wastes my time. But from an academic perspective, it's still evidence. There are atheists out there. Matt Dillahunty struggled with this lately, and Matt Dillahunty's just dead wrong on this. And he was called out by Alex O'Connor and some other Christian guy. But Matt Dillahunty's been speaking incorrectly about evidence for many years. And I'm saying incorrect by academic standards.
Basically, somebody will say, "Oh, personal testimony," and he'll go, "That's not evidence." And it's like, no, it's bad evidence, but it still counts as evidence.
Correct. Now, anyone can say, I don't give a shit what academia has to say. Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, someone could say, I don't give a shit what academia has to say. But if you're an empiricist, if you're someone that's going around with a good, sound, epistemology that you care to update, be open to revision, and try to follow the latest and greatest works coming from the greatest minds in any field, that's going to be coming from academia in almost all cases. So you should want to update your understanding of how these terms are used in an academic setting, adopt them, and hopefully help academia teach that to the rest of the world. So proof in the strict academic sense, proof usually means a demonstration that establishes a conclusion with necessity or near certainty. Now, I don't like the language of certainty here, but I understand. I don't think certainty should be epistemically relevant. I think we should be talking about confidence levels in epistemology. But in academia, certainty is still used often to or near certainty to describe what proof looks like. So if you see something and you feel compelled to say, well, that it's almost certainly the case that proposition is true, then hopefully that would be a sign that that proposition has met the burden of proof for you, when you feel as though it's almost certainly the case. And this standard exists most clearly in mathematics. So there's formal proofs in mathematics, and logic, of course. So valid deductions from accepted premises. Outside mathematics and logic, there's very little is proved in this sense. Like science, for example, is not working this way. So science generally works with evidence, models, probabilities, and degrees of confidence rather than any notion of absolute proof or anything like that. Like all scientific modeling is provisional in that it is open to update. So I hope that makes sense, the difference between evidence and proof. Does anyone want to add anything? Does anyone else notice this language being used incorrectly?
Honestly, my shit cut out like as soon as you started going into proof, but
okay, it's in the recording. We are live right now, so
yeah, I had something. I put a thing in the side chat because I asked a similar one that I mentioned because he mentioned compatibility if it's not possible to be true. So I did the cubical sphere one, and then we get the results that no amount can move it more towards because the thing can't be true. And that gives us the thing, if a thing is not coherent, if it cannot be true, then if true is 1, there's no way that you can get towards 1. If it cannot be true, then there's no way to move a value. If we're starting at 0.0000 whatever, there's no way to move a value towards a thing that cannot be. Does that make sense? So even making a proclamation that thousands of people testify of X, but if X just definitionally, logically, coherently, it cannot be true, then how can you move towards a truth statement?
What cannot be true?
A cubical sphere or
how do you know that?
Because they are definitionally oppositional. That they are definitionally in opposition.
Is it possible that they could be true and we just have some kind of ape-like block that can't see the answer to that problem?
I mean, by logic, there's different possibilities. I want to be clear. We're talking about what logically possible, metaphysically possible, and all of the different modal things. But if we're talking about logically possible, like one has one definition and one cannot hold the same definition. Like if a sphere or a circle cannot have any corners, it cannot. Yeah. A square has to have corners. Then,
is it possible in any way, Robert, that all of this stuff you just said is incorrect?
Again, this gets into the types of possibilities.
No, I'm talking about based on any possibility. Any possibility. I'm saying it within any notion of possibility. Is it the case that tomorrow an alien could come down and say, Robert, everything you just said last night is wrong, and here's why? Or even worse, is it possible that tomorrow an alien could come down and say, Robert, everything you said last night, there's a problem with it. I wish I could tell you, but your ape brain, just like every other ape brain on this planet, cannot see, just as a function of your biology. And then if you're going to say that that's not possible, then I'm going to ask why. And then typically what's going to happen is human beings are going to say, well, because I just can't understand how something could be definitionally this way. Like a triangle has 3 sides, right? I can't see the problem. That it would be logically fallacious to believe that there is no possible, like in any world, contradiction to that just because we can't figure it out. That would be logically fallacious. So and this is why I put my stake in the ground and try to put death to any notions of certainty in the mind, because we are faced with that logical problem at the end of the day, that as much as we feel, that the law of identity just cannot be showed to have a contradiction, that doesn't, it would be fallacious of us to say that that's absolutely the case and it's impossible to be wrong, because it's at least possible that despite how much we think we are done with that problem, despite our inability to imagine right now how that could be falsified in any way, that it just logically could be the case tomorrow that something new happens, like what happened with Euclidean geometry. Like for 1500 years, there were aspects of Euclidean geometry that were believed to be that it was impossible for these things to be true, and these were believed for 1500 years until someone came along and showed that this was. I'm getting feedback from you, Perry, big time.
Hey, Travis.
Yeah.
Do you have the Discord link posted in the stream, in the chat?
And what? Oh, on YouTube. Let's see. Does that make sense to you, Robert? Like with regards to like dogmatism and absolute notions of absolute certainty?
Sure. I generally don't think of things in terms of what exists. I think of things in terms of epistemology, like what can we know? And like when you're doing probability things that we can't know, like what, I don't know what we're doing. There's a black bag example that was the best one that I've ever heard, that you take a black velvet bag and you take it underneath the desk and you take 5 regular standard dice underneath the desk. And then you bring the black bag up and you say, can I pour 20 as a points on the table? And can I is a possibility. And let's say the person says, yes, you can, and they dump the bag out and there was only one dice in there. Then the question is, when they said, can you, was it possible that it could have been the case? And if there was only one dice in the bag, then it wasn't possible that it could have been the case, knowing what now we know was inside of the bag. So so when we say something's possible, it's possible as far as we know. But if we don't know, right, whatever's in the bag's going to come out. If there's a pickle in there, that it doesn't matter.
We
how
still
random
don't need
it
to
is,
be able to know or conceive of it in order.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Robert. Robert, all of our every scenario we could set up, like yeah, you put one die in a black bag, and then then someone would say, like, one normal 6-sided die, right? And someone would say, is it possible that when you roll that die out, that it shows 100 dots on one of the side? And then you would want to say, no, it's not possible, because we can't imagine how that could be the case, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's important. I think we should know the possibilities. You should know the different branches of possibilities.
And that's a conflation.
Primary.
And that's a big problem, Robert, because again, this is the logical fallacy at play here. You think it's an argument from incredulity fallacy. You think that just because you can't imagine how this 6-sided die, how it could be possible that it could show a 100 on the face, you think you are justified in putting your stake in the ground in a dogmatic way. And what I mean by that is that you are putting your stake in the ground with saying that it's incontrovertibly certain that 100 dots on one side of the die could not show up.
I didn't say that.
Well, that's what you're saying if you're saying it's not possible.
No, I said we need to distinguish the types of possible. Like these are known fields in philosophy.
Yeah.
We have metaphysically possible, we have logically possible, we have temporal.
When we're talking about this, Robert, I'm talking about pulling from all fields across the entire realm of the human experience of all of our notions of possibility. It does not matter to this logical problem. There is no field where you can be logically justified based on any logic. I'm putting your stake in the ground and saying, I am incontrovertibly certain that this is the case, regardless of what we think we know about the environment, the controls, any of our beliefs. It just simply is the case that just because we can't figure out how that could be possible, that it does not follow that means it is impossible. It just doesn't follow.
Okay, no, I agree. It doesn't.
Can I offer a suggestion real quick? And Robert, let me know if you like this or not. Mm-hmm. Your first example, I forget how it was completely laid out, but what I hear you saying is, like, through a logical framework, this can't be the case. Now, you consider maybe saying, again, whatever it was, I don't really want to look through it, but it wouldn't follow, or something like that, or it is unlikely that the dice would do this thing. To say can't or impossible, you said, you don't really care about possibility, you care more about the epistemology.
Oh, I want to speak to that.
I think a sound epistemology would avoid things like saying you can't do X, Y, or Z, or any other form of kind of cognitive rigidity that may prevent us from so likelihood and it wouldn't follow, or it seems that there's so many different words that perhaps we could deploy, but I'm not you're going to use language the way you want to use it, but that's kind of the way that I try to avoid these
and I also,
we're talking about dogma. So
yeah, I also wanted to clarify something to Robert, that I think all of this stuff we've just talked about is epistemically irrelevant. I don't include any of this in my epistemological framework. Possibility ought not be considered in our epistemological framework. Plausibility, probability should, but I like plausibility as a term more than that, in saying that just because something is, what's that? Zemo?
I was just saying I wanted to say something after you done.
Okay, yeah, but I'm saying that like possibility, I think gets us nothing epistemically. Like we were just talking about this whole idea of like rolling one dice, and then just because it's possible 100 shows up on one side, then that means that should hold some kind of epistemic weight, like with regards to our justified true belief. Of course not. No way. That would be ridiculous. When anyone is invoking possibility in their epistemological framework, I think they're just they're pissing their soundness away. They're pissing their time away, and the system of epistemology will be made unsound because anything could be given epistemic weight. Now, I think it's important to make correspondence criteria of truth primary, which is the grounding for science. If you're a person that uses science as a way of knowing, you're going to care a lot about correspondence criteria of truth. And everyone, by the way, should study criteria of truth in philosophy, so you can track and understand where you might be making mistakes, where you're simply leaning on coherence criteria of truth when you feel like it, or you just want to give like special epistemic pleading to a pet issue. The studying criteria of truth in philosophy is going to help you figure out where you are being biased in your application of your epistemic values. And then, of course, when it comes to justification for truth, I think I like saying demonstration as opposed to evidence. I think demonstration covers more than just saying evidence in justification. I think almost all conceivable things that would be demonstrated would be considered evidence as well. But I think demonstration is good too. And I have to say, thinkers who use demonstration as something they require with regards to justification, I like that, and I think it's very empirical as a justification property. And then, of course, you have to ultimately believe the proposition in the end. And quickly on beliefs, I think the reason why that concept was born in the first place was abstracted from this binary phenomena in thought, which is you're either in a state of acceptance of a proposition or not. So if someone says God exists, you either accept that proposition or you not. There is no middle ground there. Like, even if you say, I'm not sure if I accept that proposition, you still haven't accepted the proposition. So when we're talking about belief, most of the time in academic circles, I find belief being used in that way, dealing with that binary phenomena, belief being something that we cannot choose. Belief is more something that we happen to us. We become convinced into belief. There are people out there that talk about belief, and I think in an ill-informed way, as though it's something that like, oh yeah, I'm just going to choose to believe in God tomorrow and try that on to see how it works. I would say it's only it really only is a genuine belief if you actually are convinced of the proposition, not if you're like trying on the suit for a day to see how it feels. But yeah. Zemo, you said you had something?
Yeah, I mean, I just came into the convo, so I don't really know the topic, but you earlier mentioned Bayesian priors.
I didn't mention priors, but we can talk about priors. But I mentioned Bayesian. I mentioned Bayesian estimations that can be done based on our quantum mechanical knowledge. For example, we know that there's 10 to the 50, just off the top of my head, atoms in the cosmos. So once we have that information and we know what things are composed of, we can start doing, like, what is the probability that Michael Jackson is moonwalking across the sun right now? That's one I like doing. I can't remember what the answer is, but anyone who has like an AI open up right now, you can run the craziest shit based on, using Bayes and quantum mechanics to come up with probabilities for anything, really. But
I got you. Is Bayesian priors, because you mentioned it with quantum mechanics, is that one of those things that's like Michio Kaku, he said it before. He's like, I give students a test, and it'll say, what's the likelihood that you go to sleep and then you wake up on the moon? Because like
Yep.
atoms
Yep.
and small particles can just transport, and it's like a very, very small number, obviously, but it is statistically possible. Is that what a Bayesian?
Yeah. So if you're talking about, if you want to talk about Bayesian priors, you're exactly right. So these would be your starting estimates of how likely something is before considering new evidence. And Bayesian reasoning. So sometimes this stuff gets cross complicated, but Bayesian reasoning would be when you're engaging in a type of reasoning where you are open to updating, evidence or priors, like the more you learn, right? So there's a lot of different things born out of Bayes. But
and one last thing, and this is for anybody that knows about it. I'm just asking a question, but it seems like to me, like if you have Bayesian priors, and I know you said you can update them, but I guess at some point you have to come to your idea of what the prior is. But like, wouldn't you need priors to get to those priors, basically? Like, don't you need assumptions to get to a better assumption, sort of a thing?
I mean, yeah, when you look at how reasoning, works, it's like it seems like human beings never stop reasoning. So reasoning is going to be this,
really.
Reasoning is going to be this cyclical thing that's going to be affected by your sentiments and what you consider to be, good forms of reasoning, good things to consider when trying to make predictions, trying to make estimations, these things. Everyone should be engaging in Bayesian reasoning. But evidence, if you're someone that evidence updates your beliefs, then you're engaging in Bayesian reasoning if you're open to new evidence.
Okay, thanks. That's just check something. I was just curious about that. I didn't know much about Bayesian stuff. I was just curious. Thank you.
Is Bayesian reasoning one of those things like fallibilism where it's like descriptively true as well as probably a good prescription in our epistemology?
It is one of those things. I think most human beings, this is like fallibilism, right? I think fallibilism is just like Bayesian reasoning. It's like fallibilism is one of the most important aspects of our nature. This idea of,
update,
being open to update, and that's like the colloquial way of explaining fallibilism. So it's not only that it's part of our nature, this openness to update, seemingly something we can't turn off based on the most up-to-date cognitive science I've studied. But yeah, just like, and then the second part of that, not only is it descriptively true, but we should prescribe it. We should promote this aspect of our nature. The same thing that, and why? Because it's ultimately good for our health to do so. We can see the effects of fallibilism, on things like the level of cognitive rigidity at play. The more fallible we are, the more cognitively flexible we are, and this has a trickle-down effect that affects our physical, mental, and social health. And and I think just like, and I think Bayesian reasoning is kind of cut from that same cloth. It's just descriptively the case that so many human beings are engaging in this. New evidence comes into the fold, and that causes us to want to update beliefs in light of new evidence. So, that's it's a fantastic aspect of our nature that we do that. It's great that it's been codified into academia and is promoted. Just like Barry, I'm not going to say your last name because you always trick me with that. Bayesian reasoning is more or less how we do science. Exactly. So it's like one of those beautiful things that's connected to correspondence criteria of truth by way of the the fundamentals of truth in philosophy, and that's connected to Bayesian reasoning. It's connected to science. It's so it's not only descriptively a part of our nature, things that we do, even if you've never heard of Bayesian reasoning. It's like, oh, I do that. Like most people will hear it and be like, I already do that. It's like, yeah. But it's important to promote these great things that we do. And that's why it's also a really important prescription. What up, everyone on YouTube?
No, but I have a question.
Yep.
This Bayesian reasoning that we're describing right now, right? And I don't want to make the error of assuming there's a large enough overlap with the whole Bayesian versus frequentist thing. What would be the alternative to it?
The alternative to Bayesian reasoning?
Yeah.
Well,
would it be that we never update beliefs? What would it be?
Well, there are people out there who will seemingly be so attached sentimentally to particular beliefs that even when there is new evidence presented that could counter that pet theory, or that there is the heel digging issue. This can be in academic circles. But this can also be in like creationism, right? It's like I think creationism suffers from a lack of Bayesian reasoning, in that people will like it. The evidence is overwhelming. For example, that humans and chimpanzees evolved from a common ancestor. The evidence is overwhelming that the Earth is not 6,000 years old, 4.5 billion years old. So there's overwhelming evidence, begging for there to be an update that the Earth is almost certainly not 6,000 years old, but the heels are so dug in by way of the carrier's sentiments that update cannot happen. And I would say we could point at a lack of Bayesian reasoning through the lens of Bayes as an issue there.
This is why I asked about the descriptive aspect. You go, yeah. One sec, Zemo. The reason I ask is because I don't believe we can choose our beliefs. Yeah. So it's like if you remain in your prior and you don't update and you stick with the 6,000 Earth idea, I mean, is that cognitive dissonance? Is that and I may be confusing the fundamental layer with the experiential layer as well here, because it obviously seems like we can choose to update and want to update when new information comes, and then the whole phenomena of the double down syndrome, as I call it, or the heel digging, or cognitive dissonance, maybe in severe forms. But it just seems like descriptively that's the case, because we don't, on a fundamental layer, choose our beliefs. But I'm just riffing.
One thing I cannot state yet is that that constant updates are always beneficial, right? Like, for example, let's say you're flipping a coin and, it so happens it's, so far seems biased in one direction. For you to, update, your belief regarding the underlying probability versus heads versus tails with each flip might not be the best idea, right? Maybe it'll be good to wait till, the p-value crosses, some sort of threshold or something like that. And in regards to the whole creation, and I have a question tying this to the whole, for example, the whole creationist versus, whatever you want to call the alternative, right? What if they are in fact very Bayesian thinkers, and what if it's just their prior is extremely strong, right? And it is being updated, it's just not being updated sufficiently for them to cross the threshold. Or what if it was being updated for them in their perspective is that the better you're able to argue for evolution and so forth, the greater the evidence for them is now piling up in favor of how powerful Satan is to deceive people with really good arguments.
Yeah. I totally understand where you're going. And from the subject's perspective, there are going to be justifications as to why the subject does not want to update or doesn't see good reason to update. You just gave a fantastic example that the subject could say, oh, yeah, this whole you think all of this new evidence is spitting in the face of my creationism position, and it's strengthening my faith in a young earth. And this happens all the time. It's just demonstrably the case that this does happen. So yeah, I agree that is descriptively true, that does happen. Do I think that is them engaging in Bayesian reasoning? I don't see, like, we're going to get down. This is more like, if in fact we are going to say that, or they would claim that, it's like, yeah, I'm open to updating my beliefs when new evidence. It's just this evidence doesn't matter. Then we get into a debate more about like epistemic standards. Like, I'm going to try to argue that we should be using science as a way of knowing by way of correspondence criteria of truth and empiricism. And then another person would say, well, why aren't you then, by way of empiricism, giving enough weight to what is said in scripture, or giving enough weight to the creationist position? Because if you gave it due seriousness, you would be a creationist. So ultimately, this is going to boil down at the end of the day to our sentiments. So then the question is, does that mean it's useless having conversations with each other about this stuff? It's like, no, because our sentimentality can change. The simple fact that our nature is that we're seemingly always open to update, even in the deepest, darkest cults one can find themselves in, even in those situations, like, as much as they are just infallible, certainty posturing, they think it's impossible for them to be wrong about this. In the most hardcore cases, we just see time and time again that fundamental aspect of our nature of being open to update doesn't ever fully shut off. So that means dogmatisms are illusory or delusions. We can't really hold on to true dogmas as much as people profess that we can. So yeah, I guess that's my that's it. There was something else asked.
Is creationism good evidence for God, to maybe tie a link? It seems like we've been epistemic this whole time, but to get back to the topic.
Yeah, that's really good, Perry. We should get back to the topic. And of course, today's topic is a fun one. And it's a claim. There is evidence for God. We've already went through the difference between evidence and proof. I, as an atheist, don't see any proof for the existence of God. I see all kinds of evidence that I would consider, shitty evidence, not good evidence at all. But if someone brings the Bible to you and you're doing a truly academic evaluation of this proposition, and they bring the Bible as evidence, they bring their personal experiential testimony as evidence, they bring an apple as evidence, they bring a crayon as evidence, they bring Jesus on a piece of burnt toast as evidence, they bring all of this evidence. For me, when I look at all of that evidence, when I look at the evidence that people have presented, I don't find any of the evidence compelling at all. From a epistemic perspective, I think, of course, this proposition is possible, but like we talked about with Robert earlier, possibility ought not weigh into our epistemic standards, or else just because something's possible, then that means we should start treating it as though it's plausible, which is something completely different. And we can, if people are not clear on that, we can get into the academic difference of yeah,
and also tying it back to the previous conversation. Are the following two realities equivalent? One where you do encounter this guy with a toast miracle, and the one where you don't. And in the one where you do you assuming you're a Bayesian, do you update the probability that God or whatever might exist by however little?
Can you say that again? Are you saying if I had a personal experience?
No, even impersonal, right? Some guy
Okay.
comes to you with a toast, right? Like you mentioned,
Yeah.
right? Do
Yeah.
you, by however little, update the probability that God might exist?
So as we were talking about earlier, the way I understand probability is that, and and I'm a man of science. I use science as a way of knowing. I'll use quantum mechanics and you know um, Bayesian experiments to calculate these probabilities. But I understand that, like, the amount of probability that is raised by way of that personal testimony that's accompanied by the piece of toast with Jesus, the amount of probability that that raises the chances of God existing, or that Jesus was God or anything, is, there's 0.0, add on 50 zeros, somewhere between that and 100 zeros, and then add a 1, and that's the range we're talking about with how much that would increase the probability. So in no meaningful way it does increase the probability. And I would consider meaningful way to be, anything above 1 or above is how I generally function. But that's not like a stringent rule. But like, the reason why I think it's important to draw a line somewhere. It's like, there is this, because of how we understand quantum mechanics to function, so many of these things we just used to believe are only simply possible. And and I talk a lot about the seemingly infinite realm of possibility, and that realm is just like, I don't think there's anything we can do to touch or diminish that realm. It's the realm of just, this infinite thing that seemingly anything goes. But that possibility, um, infinitism, doesn't mean that we should give anything that only exists in that realm any weight. Now, the question is, now that we have quantum mechanics and we realize that, oh, okay, yeah, we can, there is a slight probability that there are 12 exact copies of Michael Jackson out there across the cosmos. And there is a probability to that. It is almost certainly the case still that that is not true. And the limited level of probability that we would have that 12 Michael Jacksons exist out there, is of no epistemic relevance. And to me, in practice, it does not raise the probability for me.
I'm curious. Do you believe that the probabilities that, for example, there are 12 Michael Jacksons existing out there, if that's related to, it all has a dependency with the probability that there are 12 Elvises out there, or are these things independent?
Well, I think those things are just, those claims are independent from one another. But
Because I'll tell you why, right? Because if these things are independent, statistically speaking, then we can find, a certain finite number, right? No matter how large, of crazy claims where it
yeah.
becomes probable that at least one of them is true.
Yeah, I mean, it could be true. So again, when we invoke truth here, then we've opened all kinds of doors, because we have to talk about by what criteria of truth we're talking about. But based on my criteria of truth of correspondence, like, does that claim correspond to reality, that there are 12 Michael Jacksons out there? It's possible that that is true. It's also true that there is a quantum mechanical probability that 12 exact Michael Jacksons, and I'm going to tell everyone what that probability is here, the range of it. Yeah, so we're talking like 1 in 10 to the power of trillions for this claim. And one of the biggest issues is the exact part, 12 exact Michael Jacksons out there. So when we're talking about 1 10 with trillions of zeros after it, it's essentially saying that it's so improbable and so close to zero that we have this tendency to want to say, okay, yeah, then it's impossible. But probability ought not be conflated with possibility. I hope that makes sense. Like, just because it's insanely improbable doesn't mean that it's impossible. And all of that also, the fact that there is a probability factor doesn't mean it should be given any epistemic weight. I think that's important. But I also wanted to just read this into the record, because I think
I can tell you guys that I've actually seen a toast with Travis believing in God on it. So, take it for what it is.
There you go. That's direct, irrefutable proof that I'm LARPing for Jesus. Okay. Possibility and plausibility are related but very different concepts. So possibility, a proposition is possible if it could be true. It is not ruled out by logic, known facts, or the relevant constraints. Example, it is possible that there is intelligent life elsewhere in the universe. It is possible that tomorrow you'll find a diamond in your backyard. It is possible that a fair coin lands heads 20 times in a row. Possibility is a very low bar. Seemingly everything is possible. Plausibility, a proposition is plausible if it appears reasonably likely or credible given the available evidence and background knowledge. So this is where Bayesian reasoning will come in, right? One more time, because I think plausibility is so important. Again, I think possibility ought not be weighed into our epistemic standards. Plausibility should. This is the good stuff, epistemically. Again, plausibility. A proposition is plausible if it appears reasonably likely or credible given the available evidence and background knowledge. Examples. It is plausible that there is intelligent life elsewhere in the universe. It is not very plausible that you'll find a diamond in your backyard tomorrow. It is not very plausible that a fair coin will land heads 20 times in a row, even though it is possible. So their relationship, think of them as nested concepts. Impossible, possible, plausible, highly probable. Not everything possible is plausible. Like, of course, the Michael Jackson, 12 copies of Michael Jackson out there in the cosmos. 1 in 10 to the power of more than a trillion chances that that's the case. It is possible that a UFO abducted me from my bed and returned me with no evidence. Given what we know, it is generally not plausible. Another example, it is possible that a stranger in Oaxaca, where I live, will randomly hand me $1,000 today, but it is not plausible. In Bayesian terms, possibility asks, is the probability greater than 0? Plausibility asks, is the probability high enough to be taken seriously given the evidence? A claim can have non-zero probability or very low probability. Yeah, so I hope that's clear between those two categories. They can get confusing. Like, so with, and then back to the topic. I just think it's important to talk about this because there are too many atheists out there getting themselves backed into corners when trying to argue people on the existence of God and saying things that are not academic, like there's no evidence for the existence of God, or there's no evidence for Christianity being true, or things like this. It's not that there's no evidence. There's tons of evidence. There's piles of it. There's piles of shit, in my opinion, as far as how I evaluate all that stuff epistemically. And I'm not saying that to be mean, and I should say that, when people come to me and talk to me about this and they mention their personal experience with God, I do take it very seriously. I want to listen to them as a moral well-beingist. I really care about anybody's physical, mental, and social health. So I am being tongue-in-cheek and lighthearted when I say the evidence is shit. But as far as like treating one another, and if I'm in a dialectic with someone, I want to not make them feel bad about themselves. But I also do want to present my counters to their positions and why I think something's a bad piece of evidence. And I think those are valid and sound things to be debating. Everyone on YouTube, I hope you guys consider joining our Discord channel if you're not a member yet. But we have conversations like this every single night. I've kind of moved my schedule around with what's going on in my life now, so I can be available more to head up conversations like this and do some debates with people who want to come in and debate me on something. So yeah, everyone in the room with us right now, if you guys could have the YouTube stream open and on mute, I'm just putting it in the chat there, that would be great. And it just helps us attract more people to the conversations. But make sure it's muted if you're here on Discord. Anyone else have any comments about, or does anyone have any evidences for God? Or go ahead, Robin.
Well, I mean, I was just gonna say, like, I've been modding on YouTube, so I don't know what all you said, but like, I do hear like a lot of people say that there's no evidence for God, and that is actually, not the best way to present what the position. Like, I feel like that there is not evidence sufficient to warrant belief, and like, I understand that people have personal experiences, and like, I don't find other people's personal experiences like sufficient to warrant me to believe that their experience is actually, what I believe they had an experience. Like, I believe when people say this was my experience, I believe that they had an experience. I don't believe that necessarily that should be attributed to a God or whatever, that because I can't, like, there's no way to test their experience to see if they were like having a delusion or if they were, just anything.
Right.
Like, I could never just. So I try not to discount people's personal experience, but I hope they understand that it definitely is not sufficient for me to believe that their claims about a God or that anybody rose from the dead or any of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Robin, what do you think about? I think something important to. I'm just going to make sure source known has the right credentials to be able to speak if they want to. Boom. So we have this thing. If you're new to the server, you won't be able to unmute right away. Just drop something in the chat if someone's not giving you credentials. It's just we do this to block trolling or people coming on and showing pornography or something like that. But Robin, what I wanted to ask you is this whole idea of, like, in some of these conversations, I see kinds of behaviors, and I'm not going to point out anyone specifically, but I see behaviors sometimes that are very similar to bullying, or they are bullying, when someone's trying to lay out their personal experience, and then, there'd be like an atheist edgelord debater on YouTube who uses that as a opportunity to bully them about something. I think this needs to stop, and I think atheists need to stand up and speak out against bullying. And one thing I'll add to that is, just because you're having a debate with somebody, just because you disagree with them, just because they potentially hold ideas that you detest, does not give you warrant to bully them. And I feel very strongly about that. Bullying on the internet by way of the dialectic, by way of debate, is a disgusting thing. It's completely anti-well-being. Any secular humanists out there who are doing this, or if you call yourself a secular humanist and you see this happening by, one of one of your favorite YouTubers or something like that, I think you have a responsibility to call it out. What classifies as bullying, Anka said? I mean, I think bullying is pretty obvious, but if someone's like, so based on that retarded personal experience you just wasted our time with, then you think a God exists because of that, you're a fucking idiot, and then they hang up on them. There's an example of bullying.
Yeah, I don't use that slur, so I don't use that, like, and
but even if they don't use that slur, Robin, like, even if they say something like that, it's like that's disgusting behavior. It needs to stop.
Like I've seen, like you said, I've seen, like, Matt. Let's take Matt for example. Like, I've seen Matt and make the same, like, talk that I just said about the evidence. He recognizes that it is evidence, that it's just not sufficient. But then I've seen him, like, bully callers, when they call in. It's easy. Like, a lot of us deal with, like, some of the same theists in chats over and over and over, and we kind of get, like, just kind of maybe burnt out on the same arguments. I try not to bully people, but I probably slip into it too, because I'm a fallible human, and driven by emotions. But it is a bad behavior. Like, it's for whether you're a humanist or a Christian or whatever. It's not helpful in the conversation in any way to get your point across. I would agree.
Yeah, I mean, people should be entering these conversations at minimum, trying to maximize well-being for themselves and those around them, including the people who are calling in, regardless of whether, again, they hold ideas that they detest or not. Just because, someone holds let's say a trans position that you disagree with, some people will think, well, that gives me, full carte blanche to just try and ruin them as a person and tear them down and bully them. And it's like, sorry, no, it doesn't. You're an immoral person if you're doing that.
I would agree with that, but, like, a lot of times, like, just holding a belief, I don't think makes somebody a bad person. That they just might not be informed or whatever. Now, we do have some people, though, that use those beliefs to, like, as a weapon, sort of, against certain people, and maybe not bullying, but, like, I feel like that sometimes that they, sometimes you have to kind of be a little harsh with some people just to protect the other people that are.
There's nothing wrong with self-defense or defense of better ideas, of good ideas. But if someone's like, oh, well, they're a bully, that means I'm going to bully them. Like, go back to ancient Sumar, like, go back 7,000 years. That's what the, the high end morality was back then. I think we've come further than that. We should be able to transcend that and put on better moral displays.
Yeah, we've kind of, like, the internet has allowed us to have a lot of traits in conversation that we probably would not employ in person.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you're out there calling people's arguments stupid, there's nothing wrong with that. Like you should be targeting the the arguments themselves, the issues themselves. Yeah, go ahead, Source. It looks like you unmuted. Oh, maybe their mic isn't working. I did give Source the credentials. Anyways, Does anyone else have anything to say on this issue? Feel free to unmute.
On the bullying, I was kind of torn on it. I get that it's not good to bully back, but you can have a bad faith conversation if you're threatening someone, like to humiliate them and have people laugh at them, and then they just end up telling you what you want to hear. Then you're not really having a good faith conversation, because they're just doing it they're doing it from fear. So I guess that you're not that's not good either. You don't want a person to just lie to you because that's what you want to hear in the conversation out of fear. You would want you'd want a truthful answer. And I guess bullying could make them just say what you want them to tell you in order to make the bullying stop, out of fear of being bullied.
Yep. I hear that, Niv.
I unironically had a dream. We were talking with Brody that one night, and I had a dream of God. Now, God was a person, and we were doing fuck all. There was several people there, and for whatever reason, I was attributing this entity as God. But this is a timely live, because I unironically had that experience, and I'd have to say that is evidence for God. Of course, I can attribute plenty of other more plausible factors, like, oh, I was just meditating on how Brody had a dream of God literally hours, 7 hours before that, and all of a sudden I'm replaying perhaps that phenomena in my dreams. So, but yeah, it is interesting, and felt I'd be remiss not to mention that happened to me the other night.
Interesting. Yeah, I do think it's important to call out this kind of bullying, where you see that a lot of the bullying is going to come by the way of personal attacks that people make, whether they're doing it on social media posts. Oh, Source, your mic's not working. No worries. Keep fiddling with it.
Yeah, make sure you're on the correct mic.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I don't like seeing the personal attack thing. Like I see it a lot in the political punditry realm as well. I try to work with some people who are perpetrators of this kind of stuff, into trying to convince them to move away from behaving like that. So yeah, no, I just think bullying is a huge issue, and if since we're talking about the claim that there is evidence for God, I think it's worth talking about the dialectic, where these, sometimes conversations relating to this can get quite heated, and people need to bring a lot of wisdom and patience, lightheartedness to these conversations, and don't allow yourself to fall into attacking people personally. If you have a platform, you're in a position of power, and people are calling in to talk to you, to debate you. don't use that power for bad things. A bad thing would be attacking someone personally, putting them down. Attack their ideas, of course, but yeah.
How should you go about dealing with the bully?
The bully? I mean,
how should you bully?
Well, I mean, you need to raise your voice when you see bullying happening. You need to tell other people about it. You need to raise your voice. You need to make sure the bully understands that what they're doing is bullying, and that, you know, you as their peers or their follower or whoever, that they need to stop bullying. And if you have to escalate that with more pressure, by way of, you know, threatening to form a anti-bullying coalition in their community that's directed towards them, like, whatever, you do what you have to do to stop bullying. But the answer to bullying is never to bully back. You're just allowing the bully to dictate your moral character. Hey, I think I might have heard a click. Yeah, we got you there, Source.
You hear me now?
Perfect.
Okay, all right.
Beautifully clear. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I had a push to talk checked on for some reason.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, anyways, you know, another angle, you know, because it's interesting, right? Because you know, this is similar to, like, you know, people who would say that the news should stop reporting only bad news, right? And there was actually some news stations that actually tried it, and they end up losing ratings. So, you know, and believe me, I'm in total agreement with the whole no bullying thing. But I could actually see a philosophy to where what we get views.
Yeah, I think that's a problem. I don't know if you feel this is a problem, Source, but in Canada, like, we have some government run media where the ratings, like, aren't the primary concern. The truth telling of the journalists and the stories that are being reported is what's of concern. So
is that just like a social axiom, or is that legislated? How do they?
It's in the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Like, we can talk about that a bit, but I'll read some stuff into the record here. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation is Canada's national public broadcaster. It was created in 1936 by the Government of Canada to provide radio and later television programming to Canadians across the country. CBC operates in both of Canada's official languages, English CBC and then French Radio Canada. Its functions include news and journalism, television programming, radio broadcasting, online news and media, sports coverage, culture and educational content, coverage of federal elections and major national events. CBC is primarily funded through annual appropriations from the Canadian federal government, although it also earns revenue from advertising, subscriptions, and content licensing. Supporters argue that CBC provides Canadian-focused news and culture that commercial media may not cover, serves remote and rural communities, helps promote Canadian arts, history, and identity. Critics argue that CBC receives taxpayer funding while competing with private media companies, can exhibit political or ideological bias in its reporting, should be reduced, reformed, or privatized. So, yeah, there are some people that do critique this. Obviously, some people will, you know, it's this whole thing that, like, if someone will feel they're over reporting on a particular scandal, and they will say that that's because it's a scandal against their favorite guy who's not currently in power. So there are things like that happens. But if you watch CBC News, it's not this, like, gore porn, like doom and gloom, negative utilitarian, suffering avoidance calculus thrown in your face type content. It's like, the bear population in northern British Columbia has been increasing for the first time in this many years. And it's not to say there isn't crime being reported. Like the news is being reported of things that are going on, things that are newsworthy. But to me, it's nothing like the United States of America news cycle. Nothing.
Okay.
Which I see as like a jungle gong show for the most part. That's not to say that there aren't some news networks in the United States that are more reliable than others. Like, of course there are, but I really like CBC in Canada.
Yeah, that's interesting, man.
Yeah,
that I want to move to Canada. I saw a car accident or it was a video of how Canadians handle a car accident, right? They're both getting. I was like, listen, that was my fault. Like, no, man, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that's nothing like America, neither.
I mean, well, the biggest difference in the car accident situation, and I hate to be blunt about this, and we're not really going to get into gun debates today, but car accidents, fender benders, road rage doesn't end in people getting shot in Canada. It ends in fistfights. As those, and from a moral well-beingist perspective, I think that's fantastic. Like, I do understand that human beings are going to get into these altercations. I wish they wouldn't get into these physical altercations. I wish they would use the law to settle these disputes. But I also understand things are going. It's just the case that things like this are going to happen. There are going to be violent occurrences, but I think when you have a gun culture like you have in the United States, and again, I don't want to open this can of worms today, but yeah, I think it's a.
So I got a question for you, man. You went down like the policy there for the broadcasting and stuff. Do you think that, like, I guess this might be like chicken or the egg kind of question, but do you think it's like the cultural like axioms that give rise to that policy, or do you think the policy kind of gives rise to the culture sort of mapping onto that?
I mean, I think mostly in democratic societies, I think it's going to be, there are certain things that are going to be implemented and tried out, enacted, and I think those things live or die based on the amount of, at the end of the day, political support they have, and the political support is going to come right from the various constituencies. So I think something like CBC. Yeah, their CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, can be eradicated. It's not like it's part of like if this falls, Canada falls. But I don't think there's been much of an appetite to eradicate it. There's some movements against it. It tends to be, based on my estimation, right wing or far right people who also hold ideas like they want Alberta to separate from Canada and things like this, or some other kind of separatist movements. But I want to check to see what kind of data I have on that. Like, what
are their objections with reporting good news as well as bad news? I don't. Or is that still what we're talking about?
I mean, like I was talking about, it's sometimes it can be this perception that, like, let's say the Liberals are in power, and they've been in power for a long time now. I mean, Justin Trudeau dominated politically in Canada, and he stepped down at the right time so that the next Liberal, the next Liberal guy was there to walk away with the next election. So the Liberals have been dominating the Conservatives for a long time now. But I wanted to see, but it's one of these things that, like, when the Liberals are in power, and then there's something like, a scandal's being reported that's against like some conservative leader or someone from the conservative side, then the beehive gets kicked, And some people are like, well, the reason why that's being reported is because it's a liberal government. But I don't think that's, I think that's, you know, a very biased way of looking at the reporting.
Gotcha. Well, let me ask you back to the bullying thing. What are your thoughts on, so I'm of a mind that a person has more control, or at least has a higher probability of rendering an outcome if they happen to be in control of a situation. Like, say that the how do I say this? Well, versus trying to control every other elements of the world, right? Like, we have more control over ourselves than we do over the guy sitting next to me or the guy across the room, right?
Yeah.
And and so it's almost like this, you know, where the accountability lies is actually with me. If I'm being bullied, then it's like it's my fault. It's not their fault. Like, they can't help it. They have some emotional problems. They weren't hugged enough as a kid or something, or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
And so instead of being offended by them, it kind of props me up into a position to not be emotionally damaged, and so mount a really good defense against them without digressing into bullying myself.
Yeah. I think there's virtue in self-defense, defending yourself against bullying, but I don't think there's virtue in that self-defense resulting in you losing your moral fortitude and becoming a bully yourself, if that's not something you support. So finding ways to defend yourself like that, or stepping up to defend yourself, I think that's highly virtuous. I think it's good for your physical, mental, and social health. I'm a moral well-beingist. This is how I'm going to measure good, bad, right, and wrong in the world. So I think it's good for your well-being to be able to defend yourself against bullying, and to not be not allow yourself to be dominated or whatever by bullies. But that being said, I think the onus is still on the bully to not be bullying people. Like, that's but I also understand what you're getting at, is that there's often issues relating to why the person is engaging in this kind of bullying, and there are things to examine there. But I don't think that should cause us to lens the responsibility from the bully onto the bully's victim. But I also think, like I said, it's just to repeat, it is virtuous to defend yourself and fight against bullying in a good faith, helpful way, when reasonable, and in a way that is seeking to maximize well-being for yourself and those around you. And that does include the bullying. So I look at this as a moral well-beingist, that I look at this as like, the bully isn't outside of my moral care or my moral consideration, just like the serial killer isn't. All of these people do not escape my moral lensing or my moral care. It's just that in the case of the serial killer, they need to be locked up, not just for society's well-being, but for their own well-being as well. I don't see it as good for their well-being to be out for just looking at themselves, to be out murdering people, because based on my subjective moral stance of well-being, it is bad for them to be doing that, and it's wrongful for them to be doing that. So they're failing on both sides of the good, bad, right, wrong, moral lanes. So and the same goes for the bully. It's like we should want to maximize well-being for the bully as well, and one of those things is to not let them get away with the bullying. This is antisocial behavior that needs to be corrected, in my opinion.
I was going to say something. Is it fine if I go real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So my question with what you were just saying there, as you said, for the bully specifically, you were saying from your point as a moralist, it's also moral, like it's for their well-being to be, I don't know if you said in prison, but prevented from killing, basically. I don't know what you actually said, but prevented from doing that. But since that's still from your, as you just said, to your subjective viewpoint on morals,
I think
how would it still be their
sorry, go
well-being?
ahead.
Like, how would it be for their well-being? Then, like, their viewpoint on morality would be immoral.
Because behaviors that involve trying to victimize others, these kinds of behaviors don't only put, especially when they're a compulsion, right? Which is often the case with serial killers and things like this. We can look at Gary Ridgway or all these where it becomes a compulsion. These kinds of behaviors, when we try to look at good cognitive scientific modeling, that's going to give us good predictions of what comes out of these kinds of behaviors. They're not good. They're things like further exasperating existing or underlying mental health conditions, putting themselves at risk for great physical harm by engaging in this stalking and murdering and all of this kind of behavior they're engaging in. And when it comes to their own social health, all of the kinds of things that they are doing to detriment their own social health so that they can maintain this way of life, this way of killing, all of those things, when we look at the life of killers, the life of people who are going out and doing this kind of anti social behavior, they're living in this high level of risk in society, and that kind of risk, coupled with the results of that risk, it's my opinion that it is better for their physical, mental, and social health to be institutionalized or incarcerated, where a lot of those risks are now going to be mitigated. They're going to get help if they have to be separated from general population when they're incarcerated. They will be. They're going to have their food, their shelter, their doctoral care, their in many cases continued educational standards or access, like many prisons have, like all of these things that they will get in prison. I think and this is just looking at their situation, not to mention the benefits for society, but just their situation. I think it's better for their life. It's the right thing to do, albeit still bad that we have to do this to a human being to cage them up.
So
I call that act just one sec.
Yeah,
I call that incarceration a bad thing, a bad act, but it's made righteous for the reasons of the effects on their well-being, paired with the well-being of society, protecting society from a person like that. So it's important to look at both sides, but it's not like the freedom itself, the incarceration itself, should mean that this person can no longer be viewed as someone we should be maximizing well-being for. For just to add one more example, if that serial killer was being tortured, if they were being malnourished on purpose, if they were, anything like that, I would be the first to be standing up and protesting against that. We would have to be providing them a situation where there is an ability for them to maximize well-being for themselves safely. I think that's important. In any prison situations that aren't doing that, I think we are failing.
Okay, so I guess my follow-up is, because I do understand what you're saying with all of it, but what gets me, I guess, is definitely for the societal perspective, I 1000% agree, right? But on the individual perspective, that's still kind of comparing it to what is normal. What is these normal things for a normative, like a normal mind, even like not a neurotyp, like if it's a neurotypical difference, right? It's just like I find it hard to say that it's specifically for their well-being because of that.
Well, it's not just that. If you try to look at it,
yeah.
I think if you try to, we'll go to source after I just clarify that. If you try to just look at it in a vacuum, like their situation in a vacuum, and you don't consider, the reasons society has to find a way to, still from a lens of moral care, but realizing this person cannot be in society anymore. Like you have to couple those things and deal with that entire picture, or else it does. Yeah, it's going to be a hard sell if you knock on a serial killer's door and try to get them to agree that this is best for their well-being. It's going to be a hard sell. But I really do believe at the end of the day, based on the kind of behavior they're engaging in, and what we know by way of cognitive science of what those kinds of behaviors gets an individual by way of their well-being, by way of their physical, mental, and social health, I think it's a much better life from a moral well-being standpoint for them to be incarcerated than for them to be out killing people. Yeah, go ahead, Source.
Yeah, so just basically to kind of add to what you're saying about that is, if you look at bullying and the intention of it, right? Like there's an intention there, even if the bully themselves doesn't declare that intention. So implicitly, they're trying to harm the individual that they're talking about. They're trying to cause some kind of emotional harm. Harmful behavior has a hidden cost. When you inflict harm upon the world, there's a hidden cost to that. And however, from the bully's perspective, they are rewarded in the event that their bullying is perceived by them as effective in achieving the goal that they sought to achieve.
Yeah, or even virtuous by their own audience. The audience being their family, the audience being their friends, like whoever, which is even more dangerous. Yeah.
So every time that's successful, it reinforces that behavior within them. So now they have a harmful behavior that's being reinforced by the supposed immediate results that makes it stronger. That pathology, and it is pathological. So and so now, if you're the type of person who actually shuts that shit down, then you have done the opposite of reinforce that behavior in a sense. So I'm in agreement, that it is for their well-being, actually, even if they won't admit that, even if they don't think so, which they probably don't.
Yeah, because I'm talking Joker. Okay, go ahead. You go ahead.
All I was going to say is I wasn't specifying because I was using the example you used about the serial killer because that's so far from the norm. Bullying is normal things like that happens. So I do agree with that sentiment. Like it's like a behavior that needs some sort of correction. But I just was wondering when it comes to such an extreme, because to me, so for example, I was always classified as obese as a kid, but I was 8% body fat. I was just hugely muscular and dense, right? So it's like an epidemiological sort of thing where it's like it doesn't necessarily fit in that category. Like it's wrong for that individual, So that's why I was trying to understand that the specificity to the extreme.
Yeah, when I talk about physical, mental, and social health, people can profess so much about where they think their physical health is at, where they think their mental health is at, where they think their social health is at. But what I ultimately care about at the end of the day is what are the facts telling us about their physical, mental, and social health? Because there are facts about these things. Facts being, the easy one. It is a direct detriment to your well-being, your physical, mental, and social health, to have your head chopped off. Now, the Jordan Petersonian knee-jerk reaction to that is, well, what if the person was suffering or deeply suffering, and then you chop the head off, and then somehow that's now good for their well-being? Well, you would no longer be being, so there's no well-being to be had. So, it's sometimes people think well-being has to do with like whatever the person wants. There are some horrible conceptualizations of well-being out there, or it has something to do with happiness or something like that. Like happiness obviously is an aspect of physical, mental, and social health. And how you feel about your experience is going to affect your physical, mental, and social health, of course. But what I care about most when I'm really trying to understand what's actually going on here is what, doctors and medical science would consider about the individual when they come in for a checkup. They come in for a checkup. Any doctor worth their salt is going to, if this is a general checkup, or if they come in with they're saying like, yeah, I don't know what's going on, but I just don't feel too psyched about life and just feeling down, like my mood. And sometimes I feel I'm really low energy. It's like, it would be neglectful for any general practitioner to not examine their physical, mental, and social health, the facts of those things. So the facts of those things are going to be like trying to get a true picture of their social health. What are their interpersonal relationships like? What's going on interpersonally in their life? There is this intersubjective space as social apes that we are all engaged in. So what's going on with that for this individual? Is that on life support for them, in that they don't have much of a social net? They don't have much social support from other people, or what's going on there? And then the mental health issue with regards to, is there some kind of disorder manifesting? Was there, going back to the social health perspective, is there a recent breakup with a girlfriend or boyfriend, and this person's experiencing some environmental, situational depression, that isn't necessarily a chronic depression, underlying depression. And this is where these categories start crossing over. And then you go to the physical. Let's get their blood tests done. Let's get some scans. Oh, their white blood cell count is kind of out of control. What the hell's going on? Some things to investigate. So all of these things are important. And there are facts about all of these categories. In my forthcoming book, which is damn near close to completion, being ready to be handed over to the editor, which I found a great editor who's going to be editing the book. I talk a lot about well-being and physical, mental, and social health in the book. For those of you who are new to Pangburn, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with our live discussions that we've produced throughout the years, or I guess I should say I've produced throughout the years, with many team members and different people supporting me along the way. But you're probably not as familiar with the underlying, physics of the Pangburn universe. What are what's giving rise to all this? Why is any of this happening? Why am I selecting the kinds of discussions I am selecting to put on stage? This will be made very clear in my first book, which is going to be titled Pangburn Philosophy, the 6 Pangburn Virtues and Maxims. And among the 6 Pangburn Virtues and Maxims, you're going to be introduced to my moral quest, maybe for the first time, which is to maximize well-being for myself and those around me. And by well-being, like I've been talking about, I mean physical, mental, and social health. And then we will go through the other 5 virtues and maxims as well. But I just wanted to state that when I talk about well-being, it is the thing that is at the foundation of my ethic, at the emergence of my normativity, by way of my Humean sentimentality. I realize that health is preferential to sickness as a foundational axiom. And I also realize that those around me also almost certainly want health instead of sickness, that they have a preference for health instead of sickness. So I see that for that reason of based on what I want and what others want, grounding a moral philosophy in that. I see that as the highest moral quest, the highest moral virtue that we can achieve, at least what I've so far. But ultimately, yes, like every other human being and their moral systems, I believe this is ultimately born of my sentiments, my feelings, my emotions, how I feel about the health of myself and those around me. But I just wanted to outline that a bit. And yes, the book is forthcoming. Hopefully we will have copies by this fall. But let's get back to the topic. And the topic today is trying to understand why there is, in fact, evidence for God. And that is a weird thing it seems like a weird thing to hear from a staunch atheist like myself. But and what we've been going through today is that in academia, things like testimonies about one's personal experience with God, that is considered evidence. But that doesn't mean you need to consider it good evidence, right? Just because it's evidence doesn't mean it's good evidence. But atheists need to get over this anti-academic way of talking about evidence, which is to say there is no evidence for God, when really someone's standing there with a piece of toast with Jesus burnt into it, and they're like, it's right here, dude. It's like, how can you not see this? It's like, yeah, I see that. I see this evidence you're presenting to me. I just think it's really bad evidence to demonstrate the existence of God or that Jesus was Lord or anything like that. So what does everyone have to say about that? Do you hear a lot of atheists out there saying there's no evidence for God? And if you do hear them, I hope that people can start making each other more academically coherent with regards to this category.
Yeah, I hear that all the time. I'm a theist, by the way. I don't know. I come across as an atheist most of the time, but because I'm a weirdo. But yeah, and I just try to basically explain what you just explained to people. It's as if their definition of evidence doesn't map onto like reality or something. That's what I yeah.
Yeah, there's a conflation with evidence and proof. We went through that earlier today. There's a difference between proof and evidence. And, based on people's epistemic standards, that's going to really dictate and what kind of reasoning they're engaging in. Like we were talking about, most human beings find Bayesian reasoning to be reasonable. So they're going to try to update their beliefs as more or new evidence is presented to them. That's interesting source. So what I think we could steer the conversation in this direction. It's interesting to hear you're a theist. What kind of evidences do you think are the strongest pieces of evidence for your theistic position?
Well, I went from atheist to theist, and I'm actually firmly convinced that the only evidence that actually has the power to do that would be anecdotal. At the same time, I don't believe that anecdotal has any force of convincing another individual. You know what I mean? So it's an odd paradox, right?
You would be surprised, though, because I went through the phenomena of Scott, we're getting some background noise from your mic, I think. I'll come to you though if you have something to say. So we went through the phenomena of like alien abductions, like someone lays down to go to sleep. They they have this experience where they feel as though they have been abducted, taken out in an alien spacecraft, and then dropped back off in their bed. And then they go back to sleep, and then they wake up and like, yeah, this actually happened. We went through like the Bayesian quantum probability of the probability of something like that actually happening, like by way of Bayesian computation and by way of quantum mechanics, what we know about the building blocks reality, and it's like it's like 1 in a trillion, right? It's just like it's or even crazier than that, the chances that this can happen. And I bring that up because there are millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of people around this planet that believe in the alien abduction phenomena. You know, it's not that they believe in every case, but they'll, you know, the people who do believe in some cases, they'll give you this case and you'll be like, yeah, but all you have is testimony here. There's nothing else. That's the only evidence that's being presented. It's just testimony. And then some people are like, yeah, but the testimony itself was so compelling. Like, it's like the Bob Lazar case, right? Like, Bob Lazar, for anyone that doesn't know, is the guy who said he's, he was working in S4, which is like kind of close to Area 51. And he was like back engineering alien spacecraft. And a lot of people will say, like, you know, I don't believe any of this shit out there except for Bob Lazar, because Bob Lazar's story, the testimony itself is so damn compelling. When it doesn't come with anything additional, it's just a very compelling story. But I think that there are religious experiences that are so compelling that people could be convinced by way of that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, honestly, that's what we like. I say a member of my group or whatever. That's kind of what we use to try to compel people to come this way, if you will. But in a debate, though, I don't think it's ever going to work, because it's a different setting, right? You're dealing with a different frame of mind in the person that, you know, it is their goal to try to discredit what you're saying if you're in a debate. However,
well, I would hope not, but yeah, I would hope not. It is often that way, but on the Pangburn stage, like, I really try to encourage the people having the discussion to really have sincere intentions to have good debate or good, honest debate and discussions, and to try and help each other out. And I just think good faith and helpfulness necessarily should cause you to be open to update with regards to what your interlocutor has to say. So I get what you're saying in a lot of I just wanted to say I do get what you're saying, that in a lot of these like blood sport atheist versus theist debate type situations, it does seem like people are just trying to like pounce on the other one and try to prove that the other one's stupid or whatever. But I think it's just like dreadfully unwise to engage in that kind of crap. But yeah, go ahead, Scott.
I mean, because it would seem to me like this whole talk of evidence, like first you have like Bayesian type of evidence versus other types of evidence, but then you also have like what types of evidences would be needed in what type of situation, right? Like, so like evidence in a criminal court is different than the evidence required in like a civil court, let alone even getting down to the level of any sort of mathematics or science where you're writing a hypothesis, testing it, you get a theory, boom, and until at some point you got a proof down the road where it's like, this is as solid as we have, right? So it seems like different versions of evidence are going to be accepted at different points in this until it can be proven beyond a shadow of that something is a proof, right? Like beyond the shadow of 99.99 that it's, you know.
So yeah, you bring up the important point of the various ways that we'll evaluate evidence. Like there are settings in like philosophical academic settings that evidence is going to be evaluated like the worst stickler you could ever imagine, and also in like scientific seminar settings. But then you'll go to like legal settings where the difference of opinions on like the force of a particular evidence versus another piece of evidence, legal experts are sitting there disagreeing with each other, and they're trying to, you know, argue just like an atheist and theist would about like whether this piece was the compelling thing that got this person convicted. And then you look at jury opinions and things like this. So yeah, of course, like just there are different categories of where evidence is going to be treated differently. But I would just say that people should not take that as license to say that, like, all of a sudden the person bringing a, Jesus baked onto their piece of toast, somehow that means that is no longer a piece of evidence. It still is evidence, even in the Bayesian sense, even in a mathematical, like if someone brought out and said, here's my Jesus on a piece of toast, this is my evidence to prove this mathematical proof. It's still evidence. It's just the dumbest piece of evidence that could be imagined, almost, right? It's just like, how the hell does that demonstrate this? It's still a piece of evidence. It's just that there's this culture out there that would say that, like, that's not evidence. It is evidence. It's just what you're saying is it's stupid evidence. Like, that's...
And I agree with you, because in the past I have been one to say, there's no evidence. But then I was like, oh, well, no, like, if we're talking about it in the sense of, like, okay, like somebody says, I saw this happen, that's evidence. It's evidence in that sense, right? Not in the sense that you would be in, like, when you're looking for evidence for, like the quantum gravity or something like that, right?
It wouldn't be considered. The piece of toast wouldn't be, like, if you were at a physics seminar, right, and we're talking about, like, quantum loop gravity, and the person's like, well, I have a proposition. I had this vision in my sleep last night that quantum loop gravity is actually this it's just purely an illusion. It doesn't even exist. There's nothing about this that should be considered, and we should consider what I'm saying just because I had this personal experience. And obviously that person's going to get laughed away from the microphone, right? Like, because the evidence they brought to the table was just, like, of no value. It's still evidence, but it just has no value.
Yeah. And that was my second part. Like, how would you, like, then you'd have to have a systems to sort of evaluate even between the different types of evidence. You have to evaluate a specific type of evidence, but then the specific form that it's in, whether something is good or bad evidence, right? And then you just have that demarker of good or bad evidence. There's evidence, but it's bad evidence. There's evidence, but it's good evidence.
And that's where it comes down to the way each of us are evaluating that is by our epistemic standards. And now some people might say, well, I don't do epistemology, but everyone does, but not everyone likes to say they're doing it. But everyone has a true justified belief happening. Like they have an idea, they have a notion of truth, even if they haven't studied, philosophical criteria of truth. They have a notion of justification at play. Like, you can't escape justification. Like, someone will be like, I don't believe in justifications. Well, what's your justification for not believing in justifications? It's not something. There's a reason why JTB emerged, justified true belief. It's because it's seemingly inescapable. So anyone who tries to, like, say, like, I don't need justification for what I believe to be true, you can just ask them a couple questions and you're going to hear the justification. Even if it's just like, I feel it, that's still a justification.
I have another question, I guess. I think it was Source that said this earlier, because I think overall I agree with his perspective, but I could be misquoting him, so I wanted him to kind of correct me if so. But like, from what you're saying, evidence exists because of how we're defining evidence. It exists. Even if it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. That is the irrelevant part. The relevant part is that it does exist. But
I'm saying that this is how the concept. Just to clarify, that's how the concept is treated in academia. The concept of evidence. But go ahead. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Source was saying specifically that I think he said he was a theist, and like it was an anecdotal experience for himself that caused him to be a believer. So is that all that actually would matter in that regard then? Because like it seems like the evidence is real, but it also is only on an individual level that it's got.
It would be awesome.
Importance?
Yeah, exactly. Like what kind of importance or evaluation that evidence is given is going to come up to the is going to be up to the subject, right? How it affects Source himself, how it affects those of us who are opened up to the experience. Some people might say, oh, damn, if that happened to me, I would be a theist. Some people might say, I mean, how could he not just see that this was just something that's like just mind dependent, something that happened within his own mind, even though it feels like things maybe were happening outside. You can go to the cognitive limitations argument, all of these things. And, so there are many different ways to take evidence. And, if Source wants to share, his source of his God belief, that would be cool.
So I just have to say there is is it Bayesian reasoning that where they define knowledge as justified belief? Is that do I have that right?
No, Bayesian reasoning just refers to, so I was talking about JTB, true justified belief, which is epistemology, where theories of knowledge live. So that's the knowledge game. And you were talking about Bayesian reasoning. Bayesian reasoning is just being open to updating. It's a process of updating, by way of reason, updating your beliefs to make sure they conform to the evidence, and updating it when new evidence presents itself. So that's that's the Bayesian reasoning. Yeah.
Okay. So as far as like justified belief, right? I don't believe that an unjustified belief can actually really exist, because I believe that, if a person believes something, then according to them, it is justified, right? So, and then we can get, well, not according to me, it's not. And then it's just so like he was saying, it was subjective. But I mean, as far as what ended up leading me to believe, I would say it was definitely an update in my beliefs, because it was a total flip. And it was like there was a process that was suggested to me, and it was an argument, right? It was actually the gentleman that introduced me to this. He basically, I was arguing with him, telling him that there's no God. You're an idiot. I don't know. I don't even want to hear you say that anymore, because I actually respect your intellect, right? This is how I felt about it. Okay, I was a bully, if you will. But anyways, he said, well, all right, well, maybe you're right. Maybe I'm wrong. Well, how would you prove it? It's like, because I said, well, science is the reason that we know there's no God or whatever. He says, okay, we'll apply science to what I'm saying. What would you do? And then I was like, well, I guess I'd have to do what you're saying. So he said, okay, well, here's what you do. And he gave me some exercises, some ways of thinking about things. And as I did this, I don't even, that quote Marco Polo, like, I never told all that I saw for the fear I wouldn't be believed. Like, I'm telling you that this story,
Gotcha.
it goes into that stuff. So I don't necessarily feel super comfortable sharing a lot of it. You know what I mean?
Totally fine. Yeah.
Yeah. But I will say that I've seen things. I've experienced things that at first I was chalking it up to coincidence. At first it was like, oh, they're a cult, they're clever, they know how to recruit people, and my draw to them was actually because I want to start a cult and I want to learn how they're doing what they're doing, right? And I'm not even kidding. Like, it's actually what I was thinking. After a while, the things that were occurring, these strange occurrences, could not be explained by anything that any group of people was doing. So I had to update it. What else could it be? It ended up turning into, maybe there's aliens that for some reason care about me or something. Then I was like, the Mothman from the Mothman prophecies. I suppose that could be
love
possible.
That movie. I love that movie, by the way.
Yeah, right.
I love that movie.
And it's like, I considered the Mothman, maybe that's real, right? At that time. So I was like, maybe it could be something like that. Eventually these occurrences went, the conception of whatever this thing must be that as far as I can tell must exist. And I'm not expecting anyone to take my word for it, because I wouldn't take anybody else's word for it. But after having these experiences with that frequency so consistently, and on top of that, they were leading me to things. It was almost as if I was achieving outcomes in my life that were beyond anything I would be able to plan or even think were possible, over and over and over again. And that's been going on for like 15 years. So that's basically my justification for believing what I believe. You know, I don't think that it would be possible for anyone to have had my experiences and not believe what I believe. But at the same time, I don't think it would be possible for me to have someone else's experiences and not believe what they believe. So if that makes any sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to ask Source
go ahead,
a couple
Perry.
questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
You started with saying, you know, you had this buddy of yours who you respect a lot, and he gave you an argument, and then you went further into well, talking about how convincing the personal experiences were, even if, you know, we don't need the details really. Which of those two things would you say led to more credence in your belief of God? The personal experience or that argument that your buddy gave you?
I would say that the guy saying what he said was just enough to compel me to consider. It was enough to evoke consideration, and then from consideration and as far as I'm concerned, experimentation. That's what led to the deeper convictions. You know.
Yep, fair enough. And I'll just that was going to be a two-parter, but you answered differently, and so this will be the last one. You said your buddy said something about science not being able to prove that there is no God, which I would.
He didn't say that. What he said was he challenged me. I said that science proved. Yeah, I said science proved there was no God already. Thinking myself a scientist when I was very far from it.
Yep.
And he said, well, you know, how would you use science to do this? Right. Yeah.
Right. And exactly. I agree. Like, science isn't in the business of doing that kind of thing. So I wouldn't prescribe that it be like part of any justification. But my question is, though, do you think that science does give any evidence of God?
Well, I would say that there are some accounts of the natural world that I think point more toward God than away from it. But that's still, you know, that's my view of it. I don't think I don't think that whether there's a God is testable. So how, you know, I mean, we can't design an experiment to test for God. As a matter of fact, even completely conceiving of whatever the hell that even is kind of hard. So you know what I mean? So
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that's more of a philosophical way of going about things rather than scientific. I didn't know if you were, you know, so. But
yeah, when I argue for God, I don't use my anecdotal evidence, and I don't present scientific evidence. I may insert some scientific in like some theory or something like that in order to support my philosophical claim, but I don't say this theory therefore God. Do you know what I mean? There's no.
I would say that you should include the anecdotal part. I know that there's like neckbeard atheists out there who will dogmatically like just deny that no matter what. But your beliefs, I believe, aren't chosen, and they come from however you feel about whatever you're propositioned with, or your experience, or an argument that you hear. So, but yeah, I hear you on, you know, no one's gonna, if you're on like a TikTok or YouTube live, that's where I watch all my high resolution philosophy. But yeah, thanks for engaging.
Yeah, sure thing. Oh, you know something, Travis, I'd like to say too, man, the debates you host are friggin' awesome, man. Like they're the best. They're the best out there. Yeah, just
Thank you.
I actually I wonder that. I hope this isn't inappropriate in this setting. I'm kind of new to the whole sphere or whatever. But I actually did like a critique, like a critique, like where you watch the debates and then talk about them or whatever of Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson and Matt Dillahunty. I never published them, but I was. Is that okay if I were to publish them on my channel?
Of course,
would you be
of
okay
course
with
you can.
I'd link your channel and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Send if you could. Maybe DM me or email me, Travis at pang-burn.com, the links just so I can send them out to the team so they don't flag it or anything like that. But really, I mean, the chances of that happening are there's very, very low probability. So, but yeah, that's completely fine. There's thousands of videos out there reviewing those events. So yeah.
Cool. And what did you say that? Travis at pang.com or at
pang-burn.com. Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet. Of course. Yeah. No, I'll look forward to watching those. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. My favorite discussion in history, my favorite debate, or whatever you want to call it, discussion dialectic in history, is Dillahunty versus Jordan Peterson.
Oh, it was fantastic, man. It was fantastic. Yeah. And Dillahunty is a real beast, man.
Yeah,
he's.
Yeah,
I have a total. I actually called in the line. Because I was like, okay, so I actually saw that debate on your channel, and then I was like, looking to, I'd kind of like to debate that guy. That was impressive. And then I see that he has a talk show or a call-in show, so I call in, right? And it was not what I was expecting. He is not the same on the show, man.
Yeah. So
it was a good time.
Yes. Yeah, so yeah, that's I think the Matt Dillahunty that has appeared on the Pangburn stage and is constrained by the Pangburn stage rules, that you must engage in a good faith, helpful way. I think this fundamental constraint brings the best out of people, and I think that Matt should embody those principles or similar principles when he's playing in the war of ideas anywhere. And I think it would be the virtuous, the right, the good thing to do. And yeah, I think I think just that might be one of the great debate performances in history. And it wasn't maybe the strongest night for Jordan, because he did kind of go down the naturalist road with Matt a lot there. And it's maybe not the strongest posture for Jordan to go down that road.
I think his strategy he chose to begin with wasn't a good move, and I did feel like he has a tendency to talk like over a lot of people's heads. You know what I mean? It seemed like he started doing that, and then he would lay off rather than drive his points home. That was my take on it. Because I kind of got what he was saying, but I felt like Matt didn't, and I don't. If people don't understand what I'm saying, I believe that's my fault. You know what I mean? Not their fault. If that makes any sense. But I could see people disagreeing with that assessment as well. But
yeah, no,
it was
totally
a really good debate, man. It was fire.
Oh yeah. No, I remember sitting in the wings on the stage, just off the side of the stage, listening to it go down, and my knee was just bouncing. I think my hand was shaking. Like, it was just such a, it was exactly what I think the good faith, helpful dialectic is all about: bringing your full passion, wearing your heart on your sleeve in the dialectic, but also maintaining an honesty and sincerity of intention, paired with a helpfulness toward your interlocutor. Now, some of that stuff sounds contradictory, because you're like, wait a second, this is a debate. Why are you helping your interlocutor? Well, because you want them to be producing the strongest body of work that they can possibly produce, so that you're contending with it. If you're sitting back just waiting to pounce when they're weakest, you're just some kind of predator.
No, I agree, straw manning another person's argument is not that doesn't do anything for your argument. Even though people tend to think that it does. But if I'm sitting here watching a debate and I see someone straw manning, like, even if I was on their side up to that point, I start to lose lose faith in their argument. It's like, why did you know what I mean? If you believe in what you're saying, if you truly believe it, then you should be able to defend it against the most vicious attacks, right? Or forceful attacks, I should say. And
I
agree with you, man.
It's just the term. You've used interlocutor before. I don't really know what that is. I don't.
Your
I've never done a
interlocutor.
debate or anything like that.
Yeah. Interlocutor is just the person you're sitting down having an exchange with. It doesn't necessarily have to be. So, like, if you're in the state of interlocution when you're having a conversation with someone at the grocery store, it doesn't necessarily have to be in a formal setting or in a debate setting or anything like that.
Okay, that helped me understand the spelling of it and everything. I was like, locator? I didn't. Yeah, equation. Okay, I gotcha.
Interlocution.
What was that, Perry?
Yeah.
Interlocution, not like interlocutor, like you're locking something.
That's why I was confused. Once he said, I was like, oh, of course, duh. Because I tried to Google it and I was like, I'm not doing this right. All right, thanks. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So and then I just wanted to because I like to read into the record. The academic definition is just a person who takes part in a conversation, dialogue, discussion, or debate. So you could be locked. You could be interlocked with yourself. I think.
That's me all the time, every day.
Well, we have 15 minutes. Does anyone have anything to get off their chest with regards to today's topic? Yeah, go ahead.
Brody, I had a dream. Yeah. It is. You prophesied correctly. Brody, I had a dream of God the other night after you told us about your dream, but not really told us about it.
Ooh, what was it?
It was just like a random dude there, and for whatever reason, I was attributing God to him. I don't really remember. I remember one scene of the dream, but I remember it being God. And yeah, we were just doing fuck all, but then I woke up, took a David, and went back to bed.
Very interesting. Does this change anything for you?
Well, the topic tonight is evidence. Is there evidence for God? And you like to show up to the party late, so we're not going to like review things like Bayesian probability and whatnot. But yeah, I would say that was evidence for God. And like, I still hold to the proposition that God's not real, of course, but it has not had it's had a change in my experience of who I am as an almost 30-year-old unk.
Awesome. That's cool to hear.
Anyone else have anything to share or mention?
Yeah, I
to
think
add
that,
to the record. Yeah, go ahead, Brody.
To add to the record, I think that beauty is evidence for God. I don't know if anyone's brought that up in this call before.
The aesthetic argument, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Brody, what we've been talking about today is this ill-advised direction that has been the direction of many atheists for a long time to make the incorrect claim, I would say, that there is no evidence for God. Well, of course, there's seemingly infinite amounts of evidences brought forth to demonstrate the existence of God, and you just provided one right there. I would consider that not to be good evidence for the existence of God. I'm open to hearing. We got about 10 minutes if you wanted to lay out your argument, but today has been a lot about, and I'm kind of glad that we're finishing with this. I hope you'll expand on your beauty proposition. But yeah, one of the big things today has been trying to illuminate a common error I see atheists making, and I used to make this error as well, and claim that there is no evidence for God, and of course there's tons of it. I just don't find any of the evidence compelling. But go ahead, Brody.
With the argument?
Yeah, whatever, however you want. You don't have to put it into a syllogism or anything. You can just talk about it if you want.
I'll put it. Okay, I'll say this. The natural world is filled with beauty. The beautiful things in the natural world have causes. and causes that have artistic intent or skill are more likely to produce beauty than causes that don't have artistic intent or skill. Theism affirms that the cause of the beautiful things in the natural world has artistic intent or skill, whereas atheism denies this. So, therefore, the beautiful things in this world are more likely to occur under theism than atheism. And because I have a piece of data that is more likely to occur under theism than atheism, it counts as evidence.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, what I think is happening is you're assuming that there needs to be an intentionality for beauty behind the manifestation of the beauty. I would say we don't need to assume that. In my view, I think beauty can be born out of the most destructive sorry, things happening out of chaos. And I think there's all kinds of beauty to be found in, like, Samuel Beckett's plays, his absurdist theater. There's all different kinds of beauties. But I think beauty is in the eye of the conceptualizer. And I think we are the arbiters and the finders and the experiencers of beauty and the determiners of what is beauty and what isn't. So I think it's the other way around. But I understand why you argue that.
Yeah, so if I could just respond to that. I'm not assuming there needs to be intentionality. I agree that beauty can be born out of chaos. But my claim was that causes that have artistic intent are more likely to produce beauty than causes which don't. So if you had, like, for example, let's say there was 100 rooms, and in 50 of them you had an artist with a sculpture, and the other 50 you had like random explosions with the sculpture. I would say you're more likely to see something beautiful come from the room with the artist. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that it can't be the case with the other 50.
I think this is kind of Watchmaker, no? Similar?
Watchmaker, so you're saying this is kind of like a intelligent design argument?
A little bit, I think so. I think you're, I think you're kind of, instead of using the the watchmaker, you're saying the artist. You think it's likely that things that have aesthetic beauty would have a creator with artistic or beauty intention behind it, right? You think that's more likely. I don't. I guess that's where I wouldn't see any good reason to believe that. Like, I think beauty is we find beauty in things and we disagree about beauty, in mind dependent things and mind independent things. And I don't see any good reason to suggest that those things necessarily must be created with that in mind. I think it's just a function of evolving apes like ourselves that we can gain perspective. We get good feeling from how some aesthetic experiences cause us to react.
Can I say something, Brody, or do you want to respond to Trav real quick?
Yeah, just real quick response.
Yep.
Just to kind of reiterate once again, I'm not saying that they necessarily must have been created with intentionality. I'm not saying that all beautiful things, but like because they're beautiful, they had to have been created with intentionality.
I know you're saying it's more likely.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I'm saying I don't understand why you would see that as more likely for all of the, you know, the reasons I just gave. Like, I think it's creating kind of a narrative behind what we observe, what is, and I guess I would say why that narrative and not a seemingly infinite amount of narratives we could write about, you know, the that reality fundamentally has the capacity to create ugly things and beautiful things and chaotic things. And that's something we notice as human beings. I think that's more consistent with the reality we observe around us, as opposed to, you know, trying to make a narrativistic claim related to God and related to artistic intentionality or an intention of beauty or anything like that. I just think the other direction is much more likely. But,
okay.
Can I'm gonna help you out a little bit, man. Like I'll say, like I'm an artist. I went to grad school for writing and stuff and film, and I could say that even though beauty does lie in the eye of the beholder, there are some things that most people will find beautiful versus things that where other people will find ugly. And a person who studies their particular craft will be able to achieve that intentionally more often than someone who is like maybe just a novice or whatever, or doesn't have that education, which suggests that there is some kind of underlying framework to beauty and ugliness, right? You know,
I wouldn't disagree with. I wouldn't disagree with that claim. Yeah. Go ahead, Bertie. I would just quickly. Yeah. I would just add that, like, yeah, I think there, due to our so many biological similarities that we have, there's a reason why our sentimentality, you know, because that's ultimately what we're talking about. We through our sense making apparatus, we take in information as we move through this experience. And the way we react to certain things, like sunrises and sunsets versus, you know, a stormy weather, and these things, I think there are deep evolutionary reasons as to why we react in certain ways and find some things more beautiful than others. And that includes not just gene level, but I would say meme level. We'll go to some cultures where, you know, the color black is not made beautiful really for through most people's aesthetic lens, and then you go to other cultures where it's like the color black, you know, in clothing or whatever, is you know, a general part of beauty, just like any other color. So I think there's the meme level and gene level issue at play there, and I do agree that, like, the more experiences we have, the more expertise we gain, the more we understand about what can happen when you achieve certain levels of mastery in certain categories. That can drastically affect one's ability to see beauty or not see beauty. But just to finish off, that genetic connection that we have, that meme level connection that we have, I think there's really good reason to believe that there would be many similarities in what we find beautiful and what we find ugly, generally.
Admittedly, that is actually a valid counter on the beauty point, anyways. That doesn't refute the whole design thing, though.
Yeah, no, that's a little more work.
So yeah. Brody has the syllogism in the chat. For 3 causes which have. So one thing I want to say is.
Wait, can I real quick, Perry? I'm so sorry.
Sure.
I hate to interrupt, but
no, you're good.
Can I just, since I was mentioned, I just want to like quickly respond.
Yes.
The so I disagree, right? That beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but that's a whole other can of worms. I think even if beauty is subjective, that doesn't negate any of the premises that I have in the chat. So anyway, go ahead.
Oh, so, yeah, and I also wasn't, just to put a cap on it, Perry, and I promise you're next. I wasn't saying that like the objective reality of me as an object. Like there's me as the object and also me as the subject. I'm saying that me as the object and that connectivity that I have as me as the object to the rest of the objects, all of you as objects, not only our connection as subjects. There is an objective grounding within our genetics that would give rise to similarities in the things we find beautiful, in the same way that, to almost all humans, gasoline on the tongue doesn't taste like something we should be doing. Some people put gasoline on their tongue, but it's there's a disgust reaction to people, all kinds of different things like that, genetic realities. But it's Perry's turn. Perry, go ahead.
Yeah, so number 3, causes which have artistic intent or skill. I think Travis already mentioned this, are more likely to produce beauty than causes which don't. Yeah, I wonder if there's any actual empirical data on that, because if we compare like natural structures where we're not assuming that there's intent by some creator, I think a lot of people would still be amazed by that. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see like the intentional part versus the non-intentional. I think that humans love to anthropomorphize things. So it may be easy to attribute intentional art that one may find beautiful to a lot of other things in life, which we don't know necessarily are intentional. We know that humans who create art are intentional beings. We have good reason to believe that. I don't think we have good reason to attribute it to the waterfall. And then also, quick one, what was it? Number... Beautiful things I see in the world are more likely... No. And I think it was number 4 I wanted to say... Yeah. I mean, think of, which I'm sure you have, you're a smart lad, think of the implications of that, things like earthquakes that kill, tens of thousands of people every year. Was that earthquake artistic? Are events that lead to unnecessary suffering and death artistic? Just some food for thought on the things that you might have to also bite the bullet on if you take this seriously. And I agree that this is evidence, by the way. I just don't think it's good evidence.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I'm trying to get to, is that this is something, like, to me, it's a piece of data that's more likely under theism. It doesn't seem, I mean, a different way to run the aesthetic argument, the more popular way to run the aesthetic argument, is to point out that there seems to be no survival benefit to recognizing beauty. But I just haven't done enough research on that.
That'd be a great... I would suspect otherwise, but yeah, I don't know the actual research on that.
But I would just say, first of all, this response that you have, Travis, once again, I'm not saying either that it's necessary or sufficient. Neither of those are my argument. So I don't know what this is really responding to.
So this one was, I should actually add, this one's from Pangburn AI system. This is for the chat. So you're saying, and if what you're saying is correct, then I will update the critique. Causes which have artistic are more likely to produce, and then it responded
so
with
that seems to be the
necessary,
or a lot of people are rejecting
number
3.
Sufficient. It mentions sufficient for beauty.
Where?
It's necessary nor sufficient. But your argument is a sufficient argument.
No, because I think that you can have artistic intent and not produce beauty. It's not sufficient. Yeah, but, like, just somebody has the intent doesn't.
No, but I think, like, when you say, you're saying causes. This is the way the system's interpreting it, and I'm curious about this. Causes which have artistic intent / skill are sufficient to produce beauty. Or sorry, are more sufficient to produce beauty?
More likely.
Right, but just when we're talking, and because my system's going to answer in
Travis,
academic.
I think I should talk to you. I don't want to talk to your AI system. It's getting this wrong.
No, wait, hang on. It's important for me to update the system if it is getting something wrong. I'm I don't want you to get offended by that. I've talked to you for a long time, right, Brody?
I know. I just get annoyed by AI, but that's fine. I understand you want to
Okay,
make it
well,
sharper.
I think you should remove that AI bias, and you should get yourself
Just like when
an AI team,
evidence for
when I'm
right?
talking to somebody who can clearly understand what I'm saying, and they like set up this AI in between us that misunderstands, it's like that's why I'm getting frustrated.
I'm not convinced it's misunderstanding. So
Well, it clearly
I
did.
think
Never said
you're
necessary or
saying,
sufficient.
well, there's a do you think there's a similarity between likelihood and something being sufficient?
No, I think they're mutually exclusive.
Okay. Fair. Let's see. You can continue, but yeah, I'm not going to stop producing this kind of information.
Yeah, so when I say like causes with artistic intent or skill are more likely to produce beauty, I think I can just steelman this through ordinary experience. I already used the example of the room with the sculptor versus the room with a random explosion, which is more likely to produce beauty in the sculpture. We can look at like the difference between like a garden and weeds. Gardens tend to produce beauty when they're organized intentionally with flowers more than weeds would. I think music, if you hear a beautiful symphony, it's because of the intentionality that went into arranging the notes. They were not just generated randomly by like different, it wasn't random. I think same with like architecture. If you brought up like earthquakes, I don't think like a pile of rubble formed by an earthquake produces the same, or we wouldn't expect it to produce the same beauty that an architect would with like a cathedral or something like that. So I just think like our daily experience just kind of shows us that causes that have an artistic intent or skill are more likely to produce beauty. Not always, but more likely than randomness or
you're denying the people who think that earthquakes are beautiful. So whose standard of beauty are we using if you're just going to say the bad things that you would have to bite the bullet on aren't actually I mean, does God pick and choose
Perry,
what he
do you think that certain things warrant being called beautiful?
If you're asking warrants in a prescriptive way, I don't know. Like, I don't know what standard we should abide by, but descriptively, it's going to come from our sentiments, which, like our beliefs, we're not going to have control over. A lot of it's going to be nature, genetics. Things like pedophilia, for example, are mainly genetic, to put that in perspective. But, we would have, and that's going to come from their sentiments and whatever physiology that gave rise to that aesthetic of theirs, we'll say.
Yeah.
I think that
this
certain
beauty
things in our
argument
world
too
very clearly warrant being called beautiful more than others, and I think I mean, from the way that it sounds like we would all like. Are you married, Perry?
No, I'm married to the game.
Fine. Like when I call my wife beautiful, or when anyone in here calls their wife beautiful, they're not like they're saying there's this like quality that they're observing within the person. They're not just some like random organization of atoms that my brain chemistry happens to be ordered to stimulate in response to.
Why are you describing why are you describing the physics in that way? Anyways, go ahead, Source.
Because Brody, it seems like this, like, okay, when we say my problem with people saying that beauty is, I have a lot of problems with with people saying beauty is subjective. I guess I don't know where to start. I know we only have like a few minutes left, and I do have to go in like 3 minutes. But I'll just say this: like, let's take a very, very, very easy example, okay? If you and I, Perry, were to walk up to an edge of the cliff, right, and we were to overlook, and there's this beautiful sun. So I won't use the word beautiful. Let's say there's a sunset, there is a waterfall, and there's a field of roses and all this stuff. And you were to look at me and be like, Brody, that's beautiful, isn't it? And I would say, no, actually, see this turd on the ground? This is beautiful. That thing over there is ugly. It's like, it seems like inarguable that I would be wrong.
It's not.
And that's fair.
It's just
but this is an argument from common sense, is what you're making.
Yeah.
Where, and right. So, again, whose standard of common sense? The guy who loves looking at David's.
Just think about it.
I have an aesthetic. I haven't.
I wish I could just shake you by the shoulder.
Hang on.
About it, or like maybe don't think about it.
I unironically have an aesthetic-based relationship with David's and the idea of shit and humor. I synthesize all of these things together. My whole moral system I view as an aesthetic kind of thing in art, shall we say. And humor I deploy as one of the main means to that end. So there's, I know we're short on time, and I'm maybe opening some cans of David's, but I'll pinch it off there, honestly. Go ahead.
Yeah, can I just check real quick, Brody?
Yeah,
I just want to say,
yeah.
man, I really like your argument, dude. I like it. I actually agree with it. However, if I can offer some criticism, I would say that this it is whether you like it to be subjective or not, it is subjective, and because of that, people are going to hand wave it away. But what you're presenting is like a kind of design argument, and there actually are objective standards that you can look to implement into your argument to just strengthen it a little bit. That actually brings it into a little bit, rather than is this pretty or not? It could be like, is this designed or not? Right.
Yeah.
So anyways, I think if you think on that, you'll come up with a solid.
I actually think
the contest
really
is figuring out whether it was intentionally created or not.
Like I hear what you're like. I don't have to argue that it's objective. I could just say like, hey, there are like these certain
commonalities
or like attributes and things we find beautiful, and they're still more likely to arise in intentionality.
Right.
I'll just say one last word, and then I know we got to close out. People disagreeing about something doesn't prove it's subjective. Like I don't know how many times that has to be said, but go ahead.
Well, I don't think it had to be said. Was anyone doing that?
Yeah, Min, and then whoever. Someone else in here.
Oh, in the chat. Oh, okay. I see. Oh, just one thing, just to annoy you further, Brody, because I love you so much. From the Pangburn AI system. So I think you were right that it kind of strawmanned you the first time, but I think it fixed it. So to establish that inference, the inference that you're making, one would need to show, and this is in premise 3, one would need to show that beauty occurs significantly more frequently under intentional artistic causes than under non-intentional natural causes. The comparative probability has not been demonstrated. So I think to make your argument stronger, you need that comparative probability.
Okay. Hey, that is an improvement, and that is something I can go forward with. I appreciate that, Travis.
Fantastic. I'll send it to you in a DM, just so it will haunt your dreams tonight. No,
you're awesome, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, good. I love you all. Thank you so much for being with us today. We're live basically every day. If you're looking for a community where you can have good faith, helpful discussions with people on the ideas that mean the most to you, come play at Pangburn in the War of Ideas. When you think of War of Ideas, you should be thinking of like when you used to go out for recess and play with each other in the playground with sticks and stones, and hopefully nobody gets hurt. And that's the analogy. But thank you all for being with us today. Make sure you're out there maximizing well-being for yourself and those around you. And of course, everyone, the party is not over. We now go down to Trav's Tavern, which is an off-air voice channel in our server here. So any of you on YouTube, feel free to come and join us there. I'm giving you the Discord link one more time tonight. Yes, again, make sure you're out there maximizing physical, mental, and social health for yourself and those around you.